Welcome everyone to our monthly webinar. And this month we are talking about action and how action creates momentum in our life. And this is something that has been a theme for No One Stands Alone Foundation for a while. It was partly our theme for our retreat and also the focus of our podcast this past month. And so we're going to close out this month with this topic. And the few things that I want to share today are, I think, really important for us to kind of grasp when it comes to understanding how to create that momentum in our life and how to actually start implementing action so that we can, pursue the dreams that we have, pursue, those things on our to-do lists that have been there for years. And, when we write a new to-do list, they just keep getting transferred from one list to the next, but they never seem to get done. And so I want to just tackle this subject today and hope that some of the things that I share with you today might spark some inspiration and hope for you to move forward. So we're going to start with just defining what action and momentum mean. Action is the fact or process of doing something, and it's usually because you want to achieve something. It's also an accomplishment of things that happens over a period of time, and it often happens in stages or through repetition. It's also behavior, conduct, or intuition. And momentum is the strength or force gained by the motion or series of events, which would be what we were talking about, which is the actions that you're going to start doing in your life. When I was preparing for today, I saw this quote, and I felt like it just really speaks to what I want to talk about today. And it says, "Inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. If you want to conquer fear, don't sit at home and just think about it. Go out and get busy." I would rephrase that last one and say, just go out and do it, right? And this is a quote by Dale Carnegie. And oftentimes the thing that holds us back is the fact that, we have desires, we communicate those desires, we even write those desires down, but we don't create an action plan of how we're going to get there. And a lot of times it's because, maybe our dream is to run a triathlon, but that seems so overwhelming. And you think, how can I ever get there? But we're going to learn today how to break things down into small actionable steps so that you can get there and that you can start putting into action these things every day, and you're going to start seeing great momentum and great shifts in your life. So when it comes to action and momentum, honestly, I think there's only three options. The first one is we do absolutely nothing. And we do nothing because of fear, maybe because we don't want to make a mistake. But my caution to you is if you take that position, you're going to find yourself a year from now exactly in the same place that you've been. And, even if you kind of look back on your history, have there been periods of time where, maybe a year has gone by, 2 years has gone by, maybe even 5 years has gone by, and something that you wanted to achieve is still sitting there on your to-do list? And if that is the case, I encourage you to take what you learned today and let it be a catalyst to start making simple, small changes in your daily actions so that you can actually get these things done. The second option is, deciding today that you're going to make a change and you're going to start making small actions that align with the person that you want to become, that aligns with your vision for your life, that aligns with your values, that aligns with, maybe who you are not necessarily today, but who you aspire to be. And each day that you make these actions, you're going to be one step closer to seeing these things fulfilled in your life. And I want to make one other caution, which is maybe you are taking action, but if you look at it and you're not getting the results that you want, my question to you is, the actions that you're taking, are they aligned with where you want to go or with who you want to be? Because if those actions aren't aligned with that, then it's going to actually lead you off track. It's going to lead you to a destination that you don't want to be in. And so if that's the case, I encourage you to use what you learned today to just pause and reflect about, well, what is it that I truly want? Who is it that I truly want to be? And then start shifting some of those action points to support those things. And when you do that, you're going to see some great shifts in your life. So I know we've talked about this a lot in the past month and a half, and I just want to quickly breeze over this, but there's, some really common reasons why we don't move into action, and I'm sure that we are all familiar with these. I know I am for sure. It could be fear, insecurity. Maybe we failed in the past. Maybe we've attempted some things and it didn't work out. Another one is we care too much about what people think. Another massive one, which I find myself having to combat on a daily basis, is distractions, right? We are well-intentioned. We have sometimes we've put systems in place, but we still have distractions. So we have to safeguard against those things as well. Maybe we have a lack of faith in ourselves, faith in those that we depend on. Maybe even we lack faith in God being able to be there for us and to provide the things that we need. Another thing that has paralyzed me in the past is what I call information overload. Sometimes it's like the paralysis of analysis. You get so much information and you feel like, how can I possibly use all of this? Like, it's just so overwhelming. And that's why today I'm just sharing very simple things that if you put into action, you're going to see the change. Another one is comparison. When we start comparing ourselves to other people in our life, we start comparing our journey to someone else's journey, or how far someone else has gone, or maybe someone else has done the same thing that we wanted to do and they succeeded and we didn't. When we start comparing ourselves with others, that can often stop us from moving in action. Another one could be laziness and procrastination. And I also put depression on here as well, because, if we are in a low emotional state and, it's hard for us to even like get out of bed, let alone, pick up a phone to make a phone call, that can seriously impact, our ability to move into action. And so these are things we need to be aware of, because if we see these things playing out in our life, it's something that we need to look at and overcome. I saw this as I was doing some on my own personal study months ago, and this really easily depicts what us moving into purpose and action looks like when we do it with motivation versus discipline. And the first picture you see at the top of the screen shows what it looks like when our actions are motivated by simple motivation, right? Like we're like, all of a sudden we're like, yes, I can do this, I'm going to do it, and we put all of our heart and mind and soul into it. But if that is the driving force behind those actions, then it's not sustainable. It's going to die out as soon as that motivation goes away. And so what we need to be doing is having discipline. And what discipline is it's small, consistent, actionable steps every single day that will create the momentum to go in the direction that we want. And you can see that very clearly in the image on the bottom. Just very small, incremental steps every single day in the direction that we want to go. And we're going to get there. And because we're doing it consistently, and because they're easy, actionable steps, it won't feel hard. It won't feel like it's impossible. Each day that we take those movements forward, it will actually propel us to keep moving on. Now, when I was thinking about this topic and what I wanted to share with all of you, this lesson that I learned in physics kept coming up, right? And so I just want to share it with you and then share how it applies to us. And so there's 3 different things when it comes to the Newton's law of motion. The first one is inertia. And two things are in this train of thought, which is an object at rest will remain at rest. The second one is an object in motion will remain in motion at a constant speed in a straight line unless it's acted upon by an unbalanced force. So how this applies to us is if we do not take intentional action, we will never move forward. We'll be essentially like this object at rest. If we're an object at rest, we will stay at rest. But the moment we take a step forward, the moment we make a decision and we create an action in our life, that's when we start moving our trajectory to something different. And once we start moving, the next thing comes into play. Once you take action, you're going to continue moving in that direction until something disrupts your course of action. That could be many different things. But hopefully you can push back past those things, whether it's a distraction, whether it's, someone saying, oh, you can't do this. Who do you think you are? Whatever those things. But oftentimes we allow those things to disrupt our forward movement. And so, this is a way that you can kind of think about it. If I'm doing nothing, then nothing's going to change. So if I want my life to change, if I want my life to be different, if I want to get from where I am to where I want to be, then I have to do something. I have to actually make a move and can make a decision to continually move in that direction, no matter what happens. The next law of motion is force. And this one says the acceleration of an object depends on the mass of the object and the amount of force applied. So how do we apply that to ourselves? The momentum you create in your life depends on the effort that you put towards the actions in your life and the consistency of those actions, right? Because I could say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to start working out every day, right? But if I just get up and, only lift the weight 5 times and then I decide to quit after 5 days, that's not going to create momentum in my life. So the more force and the more effort you put into the changes you want to make in your life, that is when you're going to see real momentum happen. And the third law of motion is action and reaction. Whenever one object exerts a force on another object, the second object exerts an equal and opposite force on the first. Now, when I was looking this up, I was like, okay, well, what's an example of that, right? And they use the example of a rocket. If you have a rocket that's preparing to go to space, it has the rocket boosters that ignite and start creating force for it to be able to blast up into the atmosphere. At that very same time, the force that's coming out of the rocket boosters is causing force on the ground, which the ground is then allowing pressure to help push that rocket up into the sky. So when you think about that in regards to your life, the momentum that you create by the actions that you do will actually continue to propel you forward as long as you continue in action. And this is so cool because I've actually seen it play out in my life. The more I choose to create action in my life, the more that it actually creates momentum. And if you've worked at this at all, you will probably be able to concur with me that that is actually true. And the more you do these things, the more you put these actions into place, the more they propel you and drive you forward. So it's time for us to act. And I liked this because it says action changes things. And like we learned earlier, if we do nothing, nothing changes. So if we want to see something change in our life, we actually have to do something about it. And that starts with our actions. I like this quote. It's from James Clear. I'm actually reading a book right now called Atomic Habits, and he's the author of that book. And he said, I accumulated small but consistent habits that ultimately led to results that were unimaginable when I started. Now, when we think about that, it's often Like, yeah, how can one simple, small movement forward today make an unimaginable difference in my life? But, I want you to think of it even in this way. If you even made a 1% improvement in your life today, and you repeated that every single day for the next 30 days, in 30 days, you would be 30% better than where you were right now. But if you decided to not do that, you'd be either in exactly the same place or perhaps even, worse off than you are now. So even 1% small incremental changes can make compounding effort and compounding difference over time. So we have to not underestimate the impact of these small habits. So I want to give you some tips on how you can move into action, because sometimes, you can be hearing me talk about this. You could be thinking, yeah, this sounds really great, but how do we actually do it? How do you change from, doing nothing, or maybe having stepped forward in some things and then give up because of opposition? How do you keep going, right? And my belief is that every single moment is a choice, right? Every morning I have a choice whether I'm going to get up when I said I'm going to get up or when I'm not, if I'm not. Every morning I have the opportunity to work out or not work out. And all of them will be aligned with what I want to see happen in my life. And so every single moment you have a choice. And you can either choose to continue moving forward no matter what, or, let yourself get stuck right where you are. And in order to move forward no matter what, you're going to have to overcome obstacles as they arise. And there will be obstacles. There will be setbacks. There will be things that oppose you. You might get tired. You might think, well, I've been doing this for a month and I still don't see results. But you have to keep pushing at it, because there's actually this ceiling. And a lot of times you don't see the results until you crack that ceiling. You go past that point. Then it's just like things start changing very quickly. And another thing I want to mention is that setbacks are literally only learning opportunities. When you have a setback, when you have a challenge, I want you to shift your mindset from it being something hard, something difficult, something you can't overcome. I want you to shift your thinking that it is something that you can learn from. Maybe you tried something and it didn't work. Well, now you can learn what doesn't work and you can try a new way, right? Maybe you tried something and then you had people oppose you. Well, now you've learned who you should trust and who you shouldn't trust. So these are things that, in some cases can hold people back, but if you really have your mindsets in the right place, they can actually be something to help you move forward. Another thing I've been talking a lot about is to break larger things down into tiny actionable steps. So for example, when I said if you wanted to run a triathlon, right? You wouldn't be thinking about running that triathlon. Maybe the first thing you're going to think about is setting aside your workout clothes, and maybe the first day all you do is put on your running shoes. And then maybe the next day you put on your running shoes and then you actually put on your workout clothes. And then maybe after that, you take another step forward and it's like, okay, I'm going to put on my running shoes. I'm going to put on my workout clothes and I'm actually going to step outside the door. And then maybe the next day you do all of those steps, but this time you actually walked around the block. And you keep making those small incremental steps until next thing you know, you're running a mile, and then you're running 2 miles, and then you're running 5 miles. And you're going to get there bit by bit. But if you just on day one say, you know what, I'm running this triathlon, I have to run 5 miles today. You know what, by the end of that day, you're going to say, I am miserable. I don't want to run a triathlon anymore. I quit and I'm not doing this anymore. Right? So you can see the difference between, when we have too big of a picture in mind, how it paralyzes us. It'll keep us stuck. It will keep us from actually moving forward in things. Another thing to consider is to act quickly. When I have a thought or an inspiration, it's like I need to move on it right away. And we've learned that there's, a 5-second rule. And we really do have a very short period of time to disrupt our normal thought process. And this concept was introduced by Mel Robbins. Connie and I talked a little bit about this at the retreat, but you can disrupt your normal thought process by counting backwards. So you count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you just decide to move into action. You just decide to do it. And it works. It helps disrupt yourself from, having that mental loop of making excuses. The longer you wait, the more you rationalize why this isn't a good idea, or why now's not the time, or why maybe you don't have the resources to do it. But when you just take those steps, when the inspiration comes and you just do it, you're going to see amazing things happen. And Connie, before you go to the next slide, I just want to share some stories with you. As I was preparing for this, I was saying to myself, Laura, you really need to live what you speak, right? And there's been some things on my list. Like I said earlier, we have these lists and we have, all of these things that we want to do, these intentions that we have. And, some of them have been there for a long time. And I know that I've had a few things on my list for 3 or 4 months, and they're important things. They're things that if I actually took care of them, it would save me time. It would save me finances. It would save me frustration. And, finally this week I said, that's it, I'm doing it. And I sat down and I carved out time to do it. And I've tackled those tasks and they're finally done. And it's freeing me up to so many other things. And when I actually showed my husband what I had to do, he was shocked that this was even, where we were at in this area. Because some of these things creep up on you and you don't really realize, right? And so this week I actually put a lot of things into action, and I'm feeling more freedom. I'm feeling like, you know what? Now I'm ready to tackle the next things on my list. Now I'm ready to clear more things off my list. I'm ready to pursue some more things that have been holding me back. Some things that, have been at the back of my mind, causing me stress, causing me frustration. But if I just continue in action and do these things, then I can successfully move forward. So I want to share 8 steps to taking action. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to encourage you, just start with one idea. Don't try to implement like 5 things at one time, because it'll be hard for you to focus and take action appropriately. And so I just want you to pick and think about one idea, one thing that you've been wanting to take action on. It could be a really small thing, or maybe it's a bigger thing. And step 2 is write down how you plan to apply or act on that idea, right? Maybe it was to apply for some program, or maybe it was to finalize something in your life that has just been sitting there for a long time. Whatever it is, write down what that thing is, and then write down a plan of how you can act on that. And, essentially that thing could be a big thing, like it could be a big picture, right? So then you're going to have to write down all the steps that you need to take to do it. The third step is to determine how much time you have to spend on it. Maybe you only have 15 minutes a day to work on it. Maybe you have a little more and you can spend an hour a day. Whatever amount of time that you can designate to working on this action step, determine what that time is, because if you don't schedule it, it will never get done. Something will always fill your time. This is something I have learned the hard way. So determine, first of all, how much time you can dedicate to it, and then actually put it in your calendar. Actually put, if you're choosing to use 1 hour a day to put towards putting this one thing into action, then schedule it in. Maybe it's right after you get up. Maybe it's just after lunchtime. Maybe it's after you get home from work. Whenever that time is, schedule it in your calendar so that you know at this time, this is what I'm working on. Number 5, and this one can be difficult, but you need to eliminate distractions. Now, a distraction is anything that takes you away from the task that you should be doing. And I've been working all day, and so many times I have been distracted by phone calls or notifications coming on my phone or people knocking at my door. And so, if we're going to be successful at taking action, we need to safeguard ourselves against distractions. That might mean you need to turn off your phone. That might mean you need to put your phone on do not disturb. Maybe you need to shut the light off at your front door and lock your door and purpose in your heart that you're not going to answer the door for the next hour. Whatever that is, however you can eliminate those distractions so that you can have that dedicated time to work on what it is that you want to work on, this is important to do. The next thing is track your progress and your growth. A lot of times we don't see how much we've grown because we don't actually pay attention, right? We don't realize that, maybe when I started working out, I could only do half a squat and I can only do 5 of them, right? But now I can do full squat and I can do 40 of them, right? That's important to be aware of. That's important to see your growth and your progress in that area, because you are getting stronger. You are getting more resilience. You are growing in your athleticism, right? And so, start tracking those things, start writing those things down so that you can be encouraged by your forward movement and your growth in that area. And don't be worried about like the final results. You will get there. It will come in time. Maybe it'll be 6 months later, maybe it'll be a year later that you'll finally reach that desired outcome. But all along the way, you're making forward movement towards it. And that's important to recognize and acknowledge and to celebrate, right? So we need to learn to celebrate those small wins. Maybe it was just that we cleared one thing off of our desk, right? Maybe it was just that we sold one item that we've been trying to sell for years. Whatever it is, celebrate those wins. Number 7, observe, learn, and improve. This one I like, just spend 10 or 15 minutes at the end of your week and reflect on what happened that week. Reflect on the actions that you did and the outcomes that you had, and even how you felt about it. And if something didn't work, change it. If something was really great, then do that more. Spend some time in reflection and be honest with yourself and make any adjustments that you need to your plan so that you can continue moving forward. And then the last one, and I think this is maybe one of the most important, is to share this with others, those that you trust. And it's for the purpose of accountability, but also for encouragement. You might be trying to make some changes in your life, and you might be doing it all on your own. And you can be successful doing that, but it's so much more rewarding, so much better if you can do it with someone so they can encourage you along the way. When you hit an obstacle and you feel like quitting, they can encourage you and say, no, you can keep doing this. You can keep going. Look how far you've come, right? And that is one of the biggest reasons why I feel like in the last 4 years, Connie and I have been able to do so much, was because of the accountability that we have with one another. That when one of us is having a bad season or a bad moment or a time where we're just doubting ourselves and we're not sure how we'll go on, we have each other there to encourage each other, to say, you know what, this is what I see, this is what needs to be done next, you can do this, and give each other the encouragement to do it. I wanted to bring up this scripture because, we might say, well, this is all like good information, but it's all like psychobabble, right? But the Bible also talks about, faith without actions is dead, right? Don't just say you're going to do something, but do it, right? And this scripture, it's actually a longer scripture. This is the part I pulled out, but you can read, I think it's James 2:14-26. But I really felt like this part really emphasized what I'm trying to say, which is, and I'm going to read it to you. But someone will say, you have faith and I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by what I do. You believe that there is one God. Good. Even the demons believe that and they shudder. You foolish man, do you want evidence that faith without deeds is useless? If we believe that we can do something, if we believe that something can happen in our life, but we never do anything about it, we never take action to see that thing come to pass, then we're essentially being that foolish man, right? Faith without works is dead. You can't please God without faith, but faith comes with what we do. And, the habits that we have, the things we implement in our everyday life shows what we believe. It shows what we have faith for. And so, this isn't just something that you learn through counseling or through your psychologist. Like, this is actually a biblical principle that, God has, and this isn't the only scripture. If you were at the retreat, you will have received like a massive list of scriptures that share, all the instances, not all of them, but a lot of the instances in the Bible where it says, you need to act, you need to step into action, you need to follow through. And that's where you start seeing the fruit. That's where you start seeing, things happen in your life. That scripture in Psalms where it says, when you trust God, you'll be like a tree planted by streams of living water and you will bear fruit in every season. I want to be like that tree. I want to be bearing fruit in every season. The only way that will happen is if I'm consistently walking out what I believe and putting things into action. And that also includes things that God puts on my heart. That includes, dreams that he's given me, things that he's spoken to me, even things that he said, Lord, I want you to do this. Or sometimes more specifically, he says, I want you to do this today, or I want you to do this right now. We need to be willing to act in obedience and follow through on those things because it will bear much fruit in our life. And God knows what we need. He knows what's good for us. And so when he's speaking those things to us, it's his way of showing us the right way to go. And so don't be like this foolish man and just say, yeah, I have faith, but I'm not going to do it. You need to match what you do with what you're believing God for. So we're going to step into our activation for today. And I really want you guys to start moving forward in action. Like I said at the beginning, we have lists a mile long of things we want to do or need to do. But, sometimes it feels like these lists never get shorter. And I find that it's often because we can struggle with moving forward in action. And so today for our activation, I want you to think of one thing that you've been wanting to act upon. And I want you to decide to move that thing forward this week. So maybe start with something small. Don't start with some massive project that might take months to do. Start with something small enough that you could achieve it this week. And then I want you to write down what are some steps that you can do to start putting that into action. And if the task feels too big, then break it down into even smaller tasks, right? Like I said, if that person wanted to start running, well, they're not just going to go run the first day. They're going to do small incremental steps to get themselves there. So break it down into smaller steps that will motivate you to continue moving forward. Then I want you to schedule time to make it happen this week. When can you carve out some time to actually put towards whatever it is that you want to move forward this week? And then purpose in your heart to remove distractions. What are some things that have kept you from achieving that thing? Maybe it's the same distraction every time. Whatever that thing is, recognize what it is, and then make changes so that you don't have that distraction anymore. And so, yeah, we're just going to spend the next 5 minutes thinking about this and writing down what we're going to start tackling this next week and how we're going to do it, making a plan. I fear not the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times. I thought this was a unique perspective on these things because sometimes we think, well, we have to do something with everything, right? And, if you are focusing your attention in 10 or 15 different places, you're not going to do them well. Just like this example, if someone practiced 10,000 different kicks, they wouldn't be an expert at any of them. But if they practiced one specific kick 10,000 times, they would be great at it, right? So if you picked one thing in your life and you keep making those small steps every day, you practice it regularly, you do those things over and over again, you're going to find yourself mastering it. You're going to find yourself completing it and moving forward in that thing. And you're going to see the progression. You're going to see the growth, and it's going to make such a big difference in your life. So what are some keys I want you to remember from what I shared today? Number one, action creates the momentum in your life to keep you pursuing the things that are important to you. Now, if you're finding that the things you're putting your actions to are leading you away from things that are important, then it's time to take a step back, reevaluate, and refocus on actions that will actually get you where you want to go. Number two, small, intentional, consistent steps towards your desired outcome will get you there in time. Do not despise the process. And number three, gaining knowledge without putting it into practice through action is absolutely useless. You will be like a tree without any fruit. And this is something important because sometimes we think, well, I just need to learn what I need to do. The more I know, then the greater ability I have to achieve it. If you could have learned everything, you could have gone and gotten your master's degree in a field of interest that you have. But if you never applied the knowledge that you received, it's literally useless. The only time it becomes useful to you is when you actually put it into practice. So even the things that I shared here today, I've shared a lot of important and useful tips, but if you don't put them into practice, it won't make a difference. And so, put these things into practice. Even take one thing that I shared today and apply it to your life. And then maybe next month you take another small thing that I shared today and you make that subtle change. But start putting these things into practice in your life. And this quote from Anton Chekhov: knowledge is of no value unless you put it into practice. And so I encourage you, even if you've been learning from other resources, don't just read these resources. Don't just listen to these podcasts. Don't just glean this information. Start to actually do them. Just like the Bible says, faith without actions is dead. Knowledge without putting it into practice is useless. Start doing the things you know that you need to do, and you will start seeing things change. Our next webinar is happening December 4th, and Connie and I will both be teaching that one, and it's about recalibrating, and it's about reevaluating what's important in your life as your seasons change. And that can be time seasons. It could also be seasons of life. Some of us have just stepped into a season of, being new parents. Some of us have maybe are stepping into a season of children leaving the nest. I'm in a new season of being a grandmother. And, we all have seasons of life. And sometimes it's important for us to reevaluate what's important to me right now. What is a value that I have right now? And what are some areas that maybe I need to rethink things and make some adjustments so that the things I'm pursuing are aligning with who I am today and who I want to become and what is happening in my life today. And so that's what we're going to be talking about next month. We encourage you to come join us then. And I'm very excited about this next announcement. If you've been following us for any length of time, for the last 3 years, we have done an online auction, but this year, we are doing an in-person event. And it is happening at the Banquet in Mahogany. And the tickets cost $25, which includes your dinner meal. It includes a coupon for any drinks that you want. We'll also have an awesome NOSA Foundation cake there that we'll be sharing amongst everyone, and also an entry in our door prize. This is happening Tuesday, December 2nd from 7 to 9 p.m. And once again, all proceeds from this entire evening, including all of the auction items, will be going directly to No One Stands Alone Foundation. And we are still looking for some donations for the for the silent auction. That should not say online, but that's okay. We are looking for, it could be gift baskets, it could be service certificates. Maybe there are items that can be combined into a larger gift package. If you have anything that you would like to donate, maybe you know some companies that would like to donate, you can pass on our information to them and notify us when these items are ready, and we can come pick them up. And I also want to mention that the last day that we'll be receiving auction items for this year's silent auction will be November 25th. So if you could please notify us by that date, that would be awesome. And as usual, I'm still doing my Passionate Pursuit Facebook Lives every weekday morning at 6 a.m., Monday to Friday. You don't have to necessarily join me live. I know that's early for most of us. So you can always catch the recording. And if you're not on Facebook, I also post them to YouTube. So you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and get notified every time I post a new episode. So there's some great ways for you just to get, the daily word of the Lord and see what, maybe God's speaking to us in this season and how he wants you to respond to what he's been speaking to me. And maybe it applies to you. And also, last but not least, Connie and I do our monthly episodes on our podcast. We have now been able to upload them all to YouTube as well. So you can find all of the NOSA Unleashed podcasts on YouTube. So if you don't have Spotify, no longer is that an obstacle for you not to be able to listen. So check us out there as well. And once again, if you want notifications when those come out, just subscribe to our YouTube channel here for this as well. And if you have any desire for mentoring or want any further support, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We would love to connect with you and get you plugged in where it best supports your needs. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.